What a rough start to the 2024 season. Nick Filato here to break down some Week 2 Washington New York Giants tape, unfortunately.
Not great, Bob.
But I want to get into something Brian Dable said. When asked about the run defense issues, whether it was personnel or scheme, Brian Dable stated it was a combination of all of it. He's correct. The structure of the defense actually improved slightly from Week 1, which was a disaster versus C-gap runs. However, an improvement from the stone bottom is still inefficient and unacceptable. Personnel, we'll get into that. There is a massive burden placed on the linebackers in Shane Bowen's scheme. For starters, the quarters defense typically has safeties at a greater depth. The corners in this scheme are rarely impressed. 72% of the snaps through 2 games saw 0 cornerbacks in the press alignment, and most alignments have the outside corners at 7 yards or 7+ yards cushion. Cliff Kingsbury's offense attacked that part of Bowen's structure relentlessly, playing into his own style, of course. The crack and replace on power gap runs was not perfect, one reason being creative pre-snap movement to displace linebackers and fool the Giants' defense. There's a lot of guessing and not a lot of confidence with the defense right now. It is a new defense. Some of this is to be expected. However, there is a real dearth of talent behind Dexter Lawrence on the defensive line. In both games, whenever 97 goes to the bench, the team runs the football directly at the Giants. You couple the talent deficiency with the missed tackles by the second-level defenders, and the end result against Washington was inevitably going to be 215 yards on the deck, 425 total yards, and yet another 0-2 start for the Giants. At least it's the first time in this regime, right? Positive, maybe? I don't know. I'm about to run through some plays to show you how Cliff Kingsbury was able to carve through Bowen's defense with a horizontal attack into a leverage advantage, and how timely play calling by Cliff exposed Bowen's defense. Let's get into it.
Here's the first play of the game. We see the Giants in their quarters look pre-snap, and something Washington did well, Cliff Kingsbury did well. He used 3-by-1 sets to attack the New York Giants off leverage. You see how these cornerbacks are so far off. Outside leverage, 2 safeties down in the field. Eyes are going to go on the number 2's release. Here, you're going to have a 3-by-1 set, and they're just going to throw the bubble off the RPO. The RPO is going to force these linebackers to step up, and they're going to get sucked closer to the line of scrimmage. You throw the RPO bubble because you have 2 blockers now, 4 guys outside of the hash, but many of them are at depth. So you catch the football, and Andrew Phillips does such a good job defeating Luke McCaffrey's block and making this tackle. Giants weren't so lucky through most of the game. This was played very well by Andrew Phillips, who had a great game. But it didn't take long for Cliff to go right back at this and attack the same exact defensive structure, this time throwing to the number 1 receiver outside, getting the number 2 and the number 3 from the 3-by-1 set out to block. A lot of 3-by-1 sets, and the Giants did not guard the horizontal attack well out of these 3-by-1 sets, as we keep seeing. Look how far off Deonte Banks is. He has about 8 yards off. The Giants are not coming downhill quickly to defeat this. They were taking a couple steps in their drop because in this system, again, it's pattern match. You're going to be reading the release of the wide receivers. Depending on what those wide receivers do could change your responsibility in these zone match type of schemes. This looks like it's going to be a cover 6. You're going to have quarter, half. Cordell Flott and Jason Pinnock are going to take the quarters. Tyler Newman takes the half. Deonte Banks is blitzing, but Cliff gets the football out of Jaden Daniels' hands so quickly. He did that all throughout the game. A lot of it was this horizontal attack, just like that. Looks like Drew Phillips was blitzing on this play. Jaden Daniels throws it right behind. That's another aspect of this game. It just seemed like every time the Giants wanted to blitz, penetrate, or do anything, Washington just had a play call to account for that. It's not like Shane Bowen has this long tenure with the New York Giants where he's established a trend, but Washington was on top of it in this game. Plays like this is an excellent design play from Cliff Kingsbury. And I wouldn't want to cover a Cliff Kingsbury offense because it's relatively boring. It's a lot of horizontal attack. It's an air raid system. Shane Bowen didn't account for that. It wasn't like there was a game plan specific to defeat Cliff Kingsbury. And that could be for a variety of reasons. That could be because he's a new defensive coordinator. He has a lot of young guys back there, and they're learning this scheme, so he can't deviate too much from what was taught and learned through training camp. But at the same time, man, they were just throwing into this. And this is how they were getting 6, 8, 7, 9 yards per pop. Bubble screens and just screens like this. This is a very well-designed screen, another 3-by-1 set. And what Washington is going to do is they're going to take the running back, Brian Robinson, and they're going to motion him to the left side of the offensive formation. That is going to expand Micah McFadden outside of that hash. Jane Daniels going to take it, throw it to the number 1. You have 2 stalk blockers and now 4 offensive linemen who are climbing up to the second level. And if the Giants don't make that initial tackle, which really Bobby Okereke can't because he gets blindsided by Sam Cosme, then there's just this alley that's created with a bunch of offensive linemen and rallying Giants defenders. If you're going to run this system of being so soft on coverage, you need to get to the tackle point and make the tackle. And that's not something the Giants did well. And then when the Giants started accounting for this a little bit more aggressively in the second half, Cliff Kingsbury responded with this on 1st and 10. You'll see Jane Daniels from the field side, 3-by-1 set. They're going to act as if it's a screen. You're going to see the apex defender come down. You're going to see Jason Pinnock come down aggressively, and it's gassed. It's a fake. It's a ruse. It's a phony. And Jaden Daniels ends up finding Zach Ertz over the middle of the field for a first down, and there was DPI. This is Bowen's system, right? He's playing off. It's not going to be like Wink Martindale. It's going to be a lot different from a run-fitting standpoint, as we have seen. Now, the Giants' run defense was bad in 2022 for different reasons. They couldn't fit counter gap. Their linebackers were a problem. In this system, their linebackers are everything. There is a lot put on the linebackers' plate if there's no defensive lineman to assist them. And we've heard Bobby Okereke speak about this earlier this week. We heard Shane Bowen speak about this on Hard Knocks, about how the linebackers, the catalyst to his system. I feel bad for Okereke because he has to handle so much. And if Dexter Lawrence isn't out there, no one's really helping him, which is a big problem. This is a very nice play call, well-timed by Cliff Kingsbury. And it's just like the Giants' defense this entire game was scrambling. It seemed like when the Giants threw a right hook, Washington ducked it and then came up with an uppercut. On plays like this, man, this is 3rd and 13. How many 3rd and longs did Washington complete in this game? So 3rd and 13 where Washington is aware that this is an attacking and aggressive team. They're going to pin their ears back. They're going to get after Jaden Daniels. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Everybody is going to drop to a significant depth, but you get Austin Eckler out flaring to the right, and then the linebacker is going to match that, and then you just bring him back on a halfback screen. You're going to allow people to bear in on you. If you're Jaden Daniels, you're just going to hit Austin Eckler, and then again, multiple offensive linemen in space. It's like a freaking road that they paved twice on these screens. With this halfback middle screen and that one that we saw before. Look at this. He catches it. There's linemen just attached to New York Giants. And there were a couple blown coverages too in the flat throughout this game. I'm not sure if I have them in this low light reel where the Giants just weren't on the same page from a communicative standpoint. A lot of that is based on pre-snap movement and motion as well. You can see, man, that is just a beautiful play design, a beautiful play call from Washington. It's not good if Cliff Kingsbury is outdoing you in this chess match so severely. Giants defense is reeling at this moment. And little plays like this, look, they were hitting them with those screens and everything, but you can attack off leverage in this way if you know the rules of the Giants defense, which Cliff Kingsbury seemed to understand. You have this tight stack at the bottom of your screen, right? The number 1 wide receiver is on the line of scrimmage. You have an H-back as well, and the running back is to that side. So you have 3 eligible receivers at the snap who are to the boundary side, the short side of the field. And all Washington is going to do, this is not reinventing the wheel whatsoever, is they're going to run the number 1 receiver on a quick spot route. He is going to sit, and then the H-back runs a flat. Very simple, quick passing concept. You see this all the time in the NFL, but the Giants don't have a banjo switch. They don't have a coverage switch for this type of quick passing attack because Deonte Banks is going to be on that number 1 wide receiver who runs the spot, and Tyler Nubin is going to be on the H-back who is going to the flat. Now, when the H-back goes to the flat, Tyler Nubin is going to expand laterally and create space for Noah Brown. That is not Tyler Nubin's fault. That is just his assignment, it appears to be, on this play. How is Deonte Banks in this compromised position going to make a play on Noah Brown? He's not, because he is so far freaking off, and there is no banjo switch coverage here. You're not switching it. Unless Deonte Banks, I see him give some sort of hand nod there, unless that was him telling Nubin to switch and it was a miscommunication, that's a plausible explanation. But if little plays like this, quick passing plays like this, are not accounted for, and there's not going to be a counter punch thrown by Shane Bowen, the Giants are going to get eaten up by 5, 6, 4-yard passes to set up yards after the catch for some of these receivers are going to be going up against. Like, look, Tyler Nubin's running away from Noah Brown because in his mind, his assignment is the H-back. There's no way Banks can make a play there. And then Micah McFadden cannot get into that throwing window either because there's the RPO threat, or at least the play action threat. It looks like it probably is an RPO. I'm looking at the run blocking. You get some guys going forward, but it also looks like it could be pass. Either way, he has to step to his run fit because as we know, and as we're about to see on this video, the Giants can't fit the run well. Just simple passing concepts. We saw another play like this a little bit later on. It's a little bit different. This one was just kind of feeling out exactly where the soft spot is between Deonte Banks and Micah McFadden. Jane Daniels getting rid of the football to Terry McLaurin very quickly. But you see Banks have to take steps outside because you have the running back coming out of the backfield heading to the flat. And then McFadden is more towards that hash. So you split the diff if you're Terry McLaurin between the hash and the numbers, and you could find plenty of room for Jane Daniels to deliver the football to make this catch. Pick up a couple yards on first down. And you have plays like this, man. This is where the RPO and the mesh point messed with the New York Giants and caused some miscommunications as well, because you have this pre-snap motion, the possible touch pass to the wide receiver coming in front of Jane Daniels. And then at the mesh point, Jane Daniels, it could be going to the wide receiver. It could be going to Brian Robinson. It creates a lot of confusion at the second level of the defense, as you see. And Micah McFadden steps. He sees Jane Daniels drop back to pass. Nobody picks up Austin Ekeler in the flat, though. So Austin Ekeler, who was that wide receiver I was referring to before, because this is 22 personnel, he's able to just flow out there and nobody matches him. And this, I'm not certain if Micah McFadden expected Tyler Nubin, the safety, to match that, because Deonte Banks is sticking with Terry McLaurin. I honestly don't know the call. There's really no way for me to know that. But you could see Micah McFadden on the end zone angle understand that there could be a problem here. Watch, he looks, he's like, oh, crap, nobody has accounted for Austin Ekeler. I got to get my ass out there. Ekeler makes a catch, picks up like 6 or 7 yards on this play. It's just obvious and expected to some degree that the Giants are not on the same page defensively. Again, this is a new defense. With the problems that we're seeing in the run defense, it's concerning, especially when Shane Bowen's defense was so good against the run at Tennessee. But this is different personnel, and personnel is an issue, as we're about to see with some of these run defense snaps. I will say at least they clamp down on the red zone, but you're going up against a rookie quarterback in the Washington Commanders. They're not a good offense. They're not a good quality offensive team who's going to be efficient in the red zone if it's not Jane Daniels' legs. And it seemed like the only time they wanted to use a spy on Jane Daniels was near the red zone. And this is the 3rd and 14 where Austin Ekeler puts them in a position to convert. I think they ended up taking a false start, having to kick the field goal anyways, but you're surrendering 13 and a half yards on a zone read. And one of the reasons why is the Giants front. Bowen loved to use this type of style of defense when he was at Tennessee, when it was in 3rd and long situations. Like, they're not going to run. We can handle the run up front with the defensive line. So let's match these receivers and possibly even drop 8 sometimes. Now, they don't drop 8 on this because A, it's a run, but you can see Bobby Okereke to the right of your screen. He has to split the difference between Zach Ertz and that hash. And you can see him shaded a little bit inside because there's no presence beyond the defensive line. So if this is a handoff to Austin Ekeler, someone needs to get there. And Okereke gets there, but he just gets juked out of his shoes by Austin Ekeler, who looked pretty damn spry in this game. But these are some of the reasons why Bobby Okereke has got a lot he has to handle here, because no one is in that A gap that Austin Ekeler hits. And Okereke is shaded in that direction, but he has to account for Zach Ertz as well. And the safeties are deep. So Okereke, he sees the mesh point, so he runs over to where he needs to be, sets up, but by the time he stops his feet to become square to make the tackle, Austin Ekeler is juking way outside of him. So it's just putting Okereke in this position where he has to account for Zach Ertz and Austin Ekeler while not being in position to account for Austin Ekeler. And this is one of the reasons why this ended up being like a 13.5-yard gain. Because you have 2 double teams on the defensive line. No one has to block Brian Burns in this situation. So he's a wasted player at this point. Not his fault. It's just the design of the play. And then you have one guy on Kayvon and a wide open A gap, and Bobby Okereke running from the inside part of Zach Ertz over to the wide open A gap that Austin Ekeler smashes. And you see blocks all the way up the field. Just nightmare situation. And here's a 3rd and 1 where the Giants, look, they're going to get aggressive. They're going to penetrate their gaps. They're going to fit their run at this snap to stop the possible rush by this Washington Commanders team who is successfully running the ball at this point. But who's not out there? Big number 97. Big number 97 is not out there. They're going to run the football on you. So the Giants tried to account for that, giving Dexter Lawrence a breather by sending Okereke and Micah McFadden into their gaps, trying to create a wall between the line of scrimmage and the first down marker. But DJ Davidson gets knocked out of his place, and Brian Robinson hits the hole right between Davidson and Bobby Okereke. It's a nice combination block from 67 and 62. But Davidson, look, he did not play well at all. He played 11 snaps. They were 11 poor snaps, especially the ones against the run. And it's little plays like this. You have 67 blocking 2 guys. Tyler Nubin is coming in as well. DJ Davidson can't get off 67's block to close down that A gap. And what happens? Brian Robinson feels it out and just goes right through. You could say, oh, well, it might be a little hold. Dude, there's holds on every single play. It's not a terrible hold. That is a play that DJ Davidson has to make. And this is something that I think is going through a linebacker's mind all throughout the game. If 97 is not out there, I need to account for my run fit, my run responsibility. But I also need to keep my peripheral vision and my eyes on the other defensive lineman's run responsibility. I think Nacho is okay. He's not a terrible player. He's typically fundamentally sound and a good run defender. There were a couple plays, I don't know if I have them in here, where he seemed like he wasn't in position and it hurt the Giants on a long run. This lack of defensive line talent is tough, man. It's tough. Here's a 3-by-1 nub set. I have Bobby Okereke circled because, again, Bobby Okereke is expanding. He has to match that number 3 receiver in the nickel 2-4-5. So he is outside of that hash. And I felt like Cliff Kingsbury did a very good job motioning Brian Robinson from the left side to the right side. So now he's toward the running back strength if he gets a handoff, because likely if he gets a handoff, it's going to be to the offensive left side where Zach Ertz is. And who is that away from? That is away from Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence is on the right side at the one technique in this over type of front. So they are going to run towards the rushing strength away from the 3-by-1 receiver. And Bobby Okereke is out there on that number 3 receiver, at least towards the inside shade of him. So you're going to have Azeez Ojulari, Raheem Nunez-Roches, Micah McFadden, who's penetrating on this play, and then Deonte Banks. And watch what happens. Kingsbury pulls both guards. Nacho is going to go into the A gap. He sees a wide open, and then Cosme does a very good job just picking him up. Micah McFadden penetrates, but the tackle gets him and turns him away from Brian Robinson. Zach Ertz climbs up to Tyler Nubin, and then Azeez Ojulari gets pushed out by the first pulling guard on this G lead type of play, and there's no one there to get hands on Brian Robinson if Micah McFadden can't on his blitz. And Okereke is way on the other side of the field, and the run is away from Dexter Lawrence. And this was an adjustment pre-snap. It might have been Jaden Daniels, for all I know, which sparked this huge run by Brian Robinson. You're not getting these DBs flying up either. It seems like Deonte Banks still thinks this is a pass well after the handoff happens. Then Brian Robinson is coming up. Like, you need Deonte Banks to be dialed in at this point to be that forced defender to come into this hole and make this tackle. If Zach Ertz is climbing up to Tyler Nubin, Banks is the unblocked defender. Micah McFadden is penetrating. If he runs himself out of the play, he runs himself out of the play. And Raheem Nunez-Roches took a step to the inside towards Dexter Lawrence because both of those linemen ended up pulling, so he doesn't have a presence in his original gap. And then Robinson just takes it, and Banks isn't there to make the tackle. And this isn't all on Banks. It's just a very good adjustment by Cliff Kingsbury and the Giants not necessarily being disciplined with where they have to be, depending on what Washington does with their offensive linemen, trying to create extra gaps to the strength of the run away from Bobby Okereke, away from Dexter Lawrence, and the Giants defenders towards that play. They're not on their P's and Q's. They're not where they need to be, or they slightly run themselves out of where they need to be. And then the forced defender or the player who is their insurance policy is taking a while to really understand what the hell is going on. Here's another play, man. Delayed halfback draw from a sidecar pistol. Love the play call, because when you run these halfback draws, you're going to get these defensive linemen to penetrate. They're going to think it's a pass. And then those linebackers, if they're not blitzing, they're going to gain depth. So then you can easily get offensive linemen, tight ends to climb up on the linebackers. And you can see how this ends up being a very nice run by Brian Robinson, who's not on the field again, Dexter Lawrence. So it's a passing situation. Sure, no Dexter Lawrence out there. We'll just run the football. And we'll also get your linebackers away from their run fits because it's going to be a draw. And we're not scared of DJ Davidson. We're going to run right at him. And then also Raheem Nunez-Roches. He's that 3 technique. It's an over front. DJ Davidson just gets knocked out by the center. No presence in the A gap. Raheem Nunez-Roches can't collapse down on it. And the linebackers take about 3 steps back because they thought it was a pass. Giants defense, their run fits, they're out of sorts. Some of this is personnel based, though. As I said, it's not good. They're getting the ball ran right at them. You haven't seen that in how long, Giants fans? When's the last time you saw teams run the ball directly at the Giants? It's like the one thing they could do well over the last 6 or 7 years with players like Dalvin Tomlinson, Damon Snacks Harrison, Leonard Williams, obviously Dexter Lawrence. But now with Dex isn't out there, it's a nightmare. They're expecting UDFAs and Raheem Nunez-Roches to be their savior if Dex isn't there. It's just a terrible situation for the linebackers. It really is. And it's a bad situation for the run defense as a whole. And this play was just very frustrating. This is a 3rd and 1, big moment in the game. Look, this is a Wink Martindale type of front. You have 5 guys down on the defensive line. Now with Wink, he would have the 3, but you'd have Dex at the nose, and then you'd have 2 4-eyes with the edge rushers a little bit outside of those tackles. So a little bit of different front. You don't see that front much from Shane Bowen. And a big difference with stopping the run is Wink Martindale's team, you could run counter against that, create extra gaps on the other side and try to wash all those guys down the line of scrimmage, and it put an onus on the linebackers to fit it. But in Shane Bowen's system, it's a different front. You're not seeing that. The gaps aren't all accounted for. And it allows the offense to establish these double teams and uproot some of these defensive linemen. And when the defensive linemen aren't all that talented, when Wink Martindale was the defensive coordinator for the Giants, he had Leonard Williams as his 2nd best defensive lineman. It was a big difference there. Right now, Shane Bowen doesn't have guys who can withstand double teams like Leonard Williams could. But the structure of the defense was also more sound when it was against duo, dive, and non-power gap type of runs when Wink Martindale was the coordinator. But here they create the wall and they stuff Brian Robinson at the line of scrimmage. But Brian Robinson had the wherewithal to understand that he's not getting through that line. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to move off to the side. And who's out there now? Who's out there? Who's responsible for this? First off, Kayvon Thibodeau gets drilled off the line of scrimmage by John Bates. His feet get tangled up a little bit. It does kind of look like a hold, like kind of tackles him. But Cordell Flott. Why Cordell Flott is out there on 3rd and 1 and Drew Phillips isn't, I am not sure. I'm just going to have to say that Drew Phillips was hurt or something, because Drew Phillips is elite apex run defender, nickel defender when it comes to defending the run. And I think he's a damn good coverage defender, everything I've seen on tape. Cordell Flott's not good at either. And Cordell Flott is out there. And you can see Brian Robinson stopped up. For whatever reason, Cordell Flott gets in on this part and doesn't contain. He doesn't contain at that point after Kayvon Thibodeau got washed down the line of scrimmage. So who's in contain? Who's the forced defender? There is none. And then Cordell Flott tries to salvage it by going for the football, falls off. And this ends up being a 40-yard run on a 3rd and 1 when the Giants seemingly had them stopped at the line of scrimmage. So this is just a wildly frustrating play. Again, it's another personnel issue. Cordell Flott should not be playing defensive snaps for a football team right now. If you want to win, he doesn't add anything in coverage, and he's a net negative as a run defender at this point. Still a young player, but you can't have plays like this, man. You can't have plays like that. Dable didn't flat out say it, but when he was asked about the personnel and the scheme, he did not refute the personnel part. Like, Brian Dable is well aware that the Giants are screwed when Dexter Lawrence is not out there on the defensive line. I think he's well aware that there are some secondary pieces that are very problematic as well. They're still young players that I think can take steps forward, but it's not great, man. Here's another very nice run by Brian Robinson, just running through the Bobby Okereke's tackle, too, at that, mind you. Again, 2 guards are going to pull. They're going to trap. You can see 93 runs himself out. Raheem Nunez-Roches. Micah McFadden tries going around to follow the guard. Brian Robinson hits it to the inside, and then Bobby Okereke makes contact, but Brian Robinson's a damn good running back. This is on the last drive of the game, too. So, again, those are all the plays. Now we're just running through some of the old plays we've already seen a little bit earlier. It's a frustrating performance. The Giants, from a run-fitting standpoint, they really do need to work on where to be, how to execute their run fits, and especially on the defensive line, how to not get uprooted and how to handle their gap responsibility and keep the integrity of the defense in place. And then from this passing standpoint that we went over a little bit earlier in this little video that we're doing, being this far off, you need to rally and tackle, and you can't miss tackles so frequently. You can't allow playmakers to pick up yards after the catch. I'm hoping that we see a little bit more flexibility from Shane Bowen. It's one thing I'll say about Wink Martindale too, is he was flexible. Like, it was, he wants to blitz all the time. It's like, yeah, that is true, but he devised game plans where it was tepid in the blitz department against Trevor Lawrence. If we go back to the 2022 season, he didn't blitz Trevor Lawrence all that often. He dropped 8 a lot in that game, and the Giants ended up winning the football game in part because of those decisions and those adjustments that deviate away from his DNA as a play caller. So I'm hoping Bowen can do that. And this is just because he's new and these guys are learning, and they're not in a spot quite yet to be that flexible with the defensive play calling. But this off leverage stuff, man, especially against a coordinator like Cliff Kingsbury, who does everything horizontally, and a rookie quarterback who was a little spotty throwing the football deep in this game, you would hope that they would have done a better job accounting for what was killing them all game, and they just didn't. Again, I like the whole bend don't break thing, but if you just keep bending, you're broken at that point, right? Like, you need to force a punt against Washington's offense. Like, please. All right. Well, I'm Nick Filato signing off. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let's look forward to week 3, and hopefully the defense can be a little bit more competent. Take care. Have a lovely, lovely day.